Hello, everyone, and welcome to our OnePlan Academy hosted Tech Tuesday, Mastering Agile Work Management with OnePlan. We're really excited because we have another great session planned for you today. Whether you're just getting started with Agile or looking to enhance your current practices, this webinar will showcase the potential of OnePlan to transform your team's workflow and collaboration. Welcome to Tech Tuesday. Tech Tuesdays offer short, focused 1-hour sessions on OnePlan best practices and hosted through OnePlan Academy. Throughout the series, we explore different aspects of OnePlan and we'll share additional learning opportunities with you at the end of our session. My name is Deb Roth, and I am OnePlan's Director of Education and Training. With me today are OnePlan Knowledge Architect Tina Shirk, OnePlan Community Manager Stephanie Salsini, and we're excited to introduce you to our OnePlan Agile Subject Matter Expert, Certified Scrum Master and Professional Services Engagement Manager Melody Schultz. Together, we are here to share valuable insights and facilitate a productive session. Thanks for joining us. Let's get started. Before we dive into today's topic, easy for me to say, let's cover a few housekeeping items. We welcome your participation through chat, polls, and the Q&A panel. Stephanie's actively monitoring these channels to ensure questions and comments receive prompt responses. Community forum, please join us for our regularly scheduled Academy office hours offered monthly for Q&A and additional support. Stephanie will share more about when these are planned at the end of our webinar. For follow-up, today's webinar recording will be available on our OnePlan YouTube channel, OnePlan Academy, and OnePlan Community. We'll also review any unanswered questions and make sure we follow up with you promptly and directly. Today's session, you have the opportunity to earn up to 1 PMI PDU. So PMI certified participants will be able to get the details to be able to claim them at the end of the session. Now I'm going to turn it over to Melody to tell you about what we're going to cover during today's session.
Thanks, Deborah. Appreciate that. So in today's session, we're going to touch on a lot of different things within side of the work plan, which is going to be our focus for our Agile. I'll do a brief overview of Agile principles, highlighting how OnePlan supports Agile work management. I will also emphasize the benefits of using OnePlan for Agile teams, such as enhancing visibility, flexibility, and collaboration. I'll demonstrate some shared practice and tips, how to set up an Agile work plan. I'll navigate you through that. Create and managing a backlog, sprint planning and execution, best practices on how to do that, as well as enhancing your sprint cadence with different notes and activities that you can also add to your schedule. And then we'll do a quick wrap up with any QAs that you may have. I do want to preface this. This is not intended to be a replacement for Azure DevOps or Jira. This is just how you can do very similar functions that you get with Jira and DevOps inside of OnePlan. But especially if you can't afford Jira or ADO, this would help you out. But Jira and ADO are great applications, and they do a lot different things. You have your burn down chart, your test plans, your pipelines, your delivery plans, etc. So again, this is not entailed to be a replacement for those, because they do offer additional services outside of what OnePlan can do for you today. All right, so we're going to just go ahead and just dive in.
Let's dive in and how OnePlan helps project, program, and portfolio managers.
Oh, great. That's a great question to ask there, Deborah, because it definitely helps, not just for the project managers. It helps, deliver success with Agile initiatives. OnePlan supports the management and monitoring of progress of very Agile initiatives across different portfolios, enables tracking specific schedules and financial health, ensuring that any risk or issues are promptly addressed to keep the initiative on track. It also maximizes value by providing visibility into budget allocations, anticipated benefits. One plan allows managers to optimize resource allocation, prioritize projects that deliver the most value. Analyzing the budget and benefit of portfolio helps identify which projects are likely to yield the highest return. And then we have efficiency as achieved desired outcomes. One plan facilitates the setting and the monitoring of clear objectives and milestones with access to detailed information such as estimated end dates, health statuses. Managers can make informed decisions to ensure that projects meet their defined goals efficiently and on schedule. By addressing all these different areas, one plan enables managers not only to oversee current state of their initiatives, but also to strategically plan for future success.
Wow, that's great to know. And can you just kind of share why all of this is important?
Yeah, it's important because it delivers successful agile initiatives. So in the agile world, we kind of put theories around how work is done, and a lot of times it is deliver often and get feedback often. It maximizes your value because it's a consistent framework. Everybody's kind of doing it the same way, but it also maximizes value across the organization because Agile just helps you streamline so many different things. Efficiently achieved by desired outcomes because with Agile, you kind of, like I said, you get to deliver often and get that feedback often, which allows those to have really effective and efficient outcomes at the end of your project.
Sounds great. Let's dive in.
So what I'm showing here on my screen is just your typical one plan project that you see here. And this is kind of where we're going to start when we're going to talk through the Agile process and how that can be implemented inside of one plan. As we said before, OnePlan offers a robust platform to manage agile projects by allowing teams to plan and track their work efficiently. As I said earlier, it can integrate with tools like Azure DevOps, Microsoft 365 Planner, and Jira, making it easier for teams to work in their preferred environment while maintaining a unified project management approach. For this today, we're not going to talk about those external applications, which are great and wonderful. If you have them, that's awesome. But we're going to go through kind of how we want to, or best practices on how to implement that inside of Agile in one plan. Some key features and benefits is work plan and scheduling. One plan allows you to create and manage both simple to-do lists and complex schedules. You can switch between different views such as to-do, advanced scheduling, and Gantt to visualize and manage your projects. I'm just going to pop over here to the work plan that I have here. And those views that I'm talking about are right over here. They're out of the box. So if you're not very familiar with them, you'll see them right here. So you have your advanced scheduling, you have your to-do, and you also have your Gantt chart here as well. So you do have those specific views inside of one plan that you can use today. We also have and can create or organize on Agile backlog within one plan. This feature enables you to assign backlog items to sprint, track progress, ensure that all the tasks are aligned with the project goals. Integration with Agile management tools. We talked about that, the Jira, the ADO, the Microsoft Planner. You can connect to a lot of them. Even though we're in the project itself and inside the work plan, a lot of this is, affects how the framework for the portfolio management looks and helping you align your project with strategic business objectives. This includes features like portfolio planning, execution, and tracking progress against key results. The Agile implementation methodology here in one plan focuses on delivering business value early and often by organizing business objectives into sprints. One plan enables you to kind of what we call shift to the left, meaning that business value is delivered early with a lower risk and than traditional project methods. So for this demonstration today, I'm kind of going to be implementing what a new CR system to kind of give you a quick little business case about that. Our current customer management processes are fragmented across multiple tools, leading to insufficiency, data silos, and inconsistent consumer experiences. Implementing a centralized CRM system will streamline operations, improving data visibility, and enhance customers' engagement across sales, marketing, and support functions. So here I am inside of my work plan. I have a schedule here, as you can see. When you're looking at my schedule, you will see that I have a sprint 1 all the way down to sprint 4. Now, why is this important? For sprint 0, let me go ahead and kind of expand that out. Sprint 0 kind of lays the groundwork for success by aligning on goals, defining your MVP, and ensuring technical readiness before development begins. What you want to do within a sprint 0, this is where you're going to be reviewing business processes from start to finishing, defining the current state and the desired future state, and comparing those to the various value streams. This is also where you want to kind of define the project plan in terms of user stories and sprints, conduct the technical planning and readiness activities in parallel. Align on the minimal viable project, because as we all know, we have a certain amount of budget on a project, and so a certain amount of hours and effort associated to that. So great if we had an unlimited budget and we can do everything, but we definitely can't. And so this is where you want to come in with your minimum valuable product, meaning those stories that you need to have to go live. Definitely want to make sure that that all happens in sprint 0. So sprint 0, more or less, is where you're going to gather a lot of your requirements, so that you have an understanding of what the client needs from the project, what it entails. Are you going to need external resources? Maybe, maybe not. Are you going to need help from internal teams like your tech team or your Microsoft 365 team? Are you going to need those? So I always recommend with your sprint 0, I always call it planning and preparation, because this is what you're doing. You're planning for that project, and then you're preparing for the execution of that project. Another nice thing that I do recommend when you are building out your agile plan here with inside of OnePlan, you have a nice little note section right over here. And using that note section, you can put a lot of different things in there, the duration of how long your sprint is going to be, some of the objectives that you want to achieve as part of that sprint, and also various activities that you want to make sure that are captured as part of that sprint as well. I always recommend when you are doing your sprints, and in this example, we're doing 2-week sprints. So we do have a 10-day sprint. Set your sprints up with your start date and your due date, and then your various tasks that you need to have to complete that. Now, granted, you may have more than just 4 working sessions to gather all the requirements that you're going to need, so that you can write good user stories, so that you can start doing your configuration and your work. So you may need more than that in your Agile, but for this demo, we're just going to kind of show you what I recommend. It's having your various working sessions. You may have 4, you may have 8, and that is fine. I always like to assign a resource to this. Who is going to be the person responsible for your tech readiness? That may be a technical person. Who's going to be responsible for the work session number 1? A lot of times, if you don't have an in-house facilitator, a lot of times this will fall on the project manager to kind of go through those working sessions, have those conversations, ask the appropriate and correct questions, so that you get as much feedback as you can to know exactly what needs to be done on that project. So it's always important to have somebody that will be managing these. Usually, like I said, it does end up being the project manager, but you may also have a business analyst or a project lead that also may be facilitating a lot of those working sessions to get those different requirements. And so I'm going to kind of skip over from Sprint 0 and kind of go into our backlog and talk a little bit about backlog and how you can do that with inside of OnePlan. So you do have a backlog section inside of OnePlan. If you go and click on the backlog It'll take you to the backlog. As you can see here, I have already some user stories in my sprint 1, some user stories for my sprint 2, and user stories for my sprint 3. When you're first coming into your backlog and configuring this within OnePlan, one thing to keep in mind is that you want to first configure your sprints. So if you go to options and then you go to sprints, you want to make sure that you've configured your sprints first. And you want to make sure that these sprints match the sprint frames that you have on your schedule. So we want to make sure that these dates here would match up to our project schedule that we have. And so now that we've gone through all our working sessions, et cetera, we can come in here and we can start implementing our user stories and putting them into the system. So go ahead and kind of click off the sprint there. And so now I'm in my backlog. So I have my different stories here. I can open them up. I can see the various tasks, and I have different tasks assigned to this specific story. I also have put in effort into this story as well. And so we have each one of these tasks has their associated effort. And as you look at this different effort, you will see that will calculate and will roll up to exactly what that remaining effort is on that story. So you have your effort, which is the original effort on the story, and then you have your remaining effort. What happens with inside of OnePlan is when a user picks up this task, puts it on their timesheet, and they put time towards this task, the timesheet hours will show up in here. It'll be calculated against the effort, and then it will show you the remaining effort that's left. So let's say somebody puts in a timesheet for 2 hours against extract data from legacy system. And then when they put that timesheet in, the system will automatically calculate. It will take the 2 hours from the 5, and it will leave the remaining effort. I'm not sure why that is showing 8 there, but my apologies there, because that should be actually a 5. One of the other things that you'll see with inside of the backlog is it will take all of the remaining effort and calculate it up into one area. So for example, with we have our sprint 1 here, which we have, just started populating our stories. And it's pretty easy to populate a story or a task in here. You just quickly go ahead and you can do that. And you can just say, add a task above or below. So I'm just going to click below. You have your new task. You can name it whatever you want. We'll just, for now, we'll call this demo task. Whoops. Got to spell task. And so now you have your demo task. I don't recommend putting your tasks into a sprint because you've done that with your user story above, but you definitely could. But you also want to make sure that you do mark it as a task. Why is that important? That is important because when you're doing any type of reporting out of the system, whether it's Power BI or any other reporting that you do, you want to make sure that users understand that this is a task associated to this story. And so you want to make sure that you have that association there. So you always want to make sure that you have tasks. You can also put start and due dates on your task if you're like. I don't, simply because I do have it at my story level. And though I can very easily see when these tasks are completed, once they've been started, they'll be completed once the hours have been burnt down. I can definitely see that. But if you wanted to, you could go ahead and you can do that as well. Once you've added your task, go ahead and kind of put in whatever effort estimate that you have been given, or your business analyst or whoever does those estimates on those various tasks, they can put them in there into the system. That will add that and then make that adjustment at the top level so that you can see what that is at for each individual sprint. One of the other things to keep in mind when you're building out your backlog, what's really nice is once you've kind of got your backlog built out, you definitely want to take a look at your backlog and compare that to what your estimated hours on your schedule were. Because as we all know, we are tied to a budget, so we always want to make sure that we can keep within our budget. So for example here, we have for sprint 1, pull customer data. It's a total effort of 28 hours. And so let's go back to our schedule. And we can look at our sprint one here, and we can see that we have 122.5 hours available for this sprint. So we're kind of low. So that means that, okay, now we can pull in a lot more stories. Maybe we can take those stories that are in the backlog that are actually designated for sprint two and pull them into sprint one, and make sure that we have the appropriate hours to be working in. When you are doing your initial schedule out here, that is also something to be very aware of. You have your build and configuration of solution. And so you may choose to say, okay, when it comes to building and configuration, these are the hours that I am going to allocate to the stories in my backlog. So you may not allocate that 122.5 hours to all the stories in the backlog. You may only allocate like 80 for your build and configuration solution. So that's definitely something to keep in mind when you're doing agile practices with inside of OnePlan. You want to make sure that the hours that you have associated on your schedule match up to the hours that you have within the sprint and the actual user stories and tasks that need to be completed. Um, so this is kind of how I do it today. When it comes to my build and configuration solution, I want to make sure that for my sprint one, I have that 80 hours. So if I go back to my backlog, I know that I have these two items in my backlog for sprint one, these two user stories, and they total up to 38 hours. So I have quite a few hours that left that I could pull in additional stories. I can add more stories by, adding a new task in here and putting in a new story. However, I want to do that, or I can simply say, okay, I'm going to change social media login from a sprint one two to a sprint one. The system, once I save that, is going to update that, and it will now appear in sprint one, and it has a new start date of 8/06/2025. So now if I look at that, I can tally up those numbers again. I can see that, I still have a lot of hours left. If I go ahead and select this one as well, and I'm going to say I'm going to pull that one into sprint one, two, and then I can go ahead and save. The system would automatically update that. So now I know that I have roughly 40, if I'm doing my math correctly, 49 hours of work in the sprint, which still gives me a lot more hours that I can work with here within the system. So you can add your different user stories, move them around, change the sprint that they're in. It doesn't change the task underneath. The tasks will stay right along with the user story. And so you still have access to those tasks. They do not move at all. One thing else, when you're talking about, doing your backlog management, you want to make sure that you do have a good, healthy backlog. You want to make sure that you review your backlog on a regular basis. Yeah, definitely always want to do that, because as we're developing and configuring and working on the project, on getting that feedback, demoing out and giving feedback, sometimes the criterias or the acceptance criteria will change a little bit. And so you may have to update that, or you may have to make some tweaks and changes to your story. So it's always important to keep your stories up to date. I did just mention about acceptance criteria. So you're kind of wondering, how do I do that? How do I get my description of my user story in there? Or how do I do my acceptance criteria? I highly recommend you do some form configuration for your backlog. So if I go ahead and I open up this one and I go to my quick edit and pop that out, I have created a backlog form to be associated with that. So I have a backlog description, and these are good normal agile practices. As a sales executive, I need to access customer information quickly so that I can provide better services. It's the who, the what, and why. So that's always important. And then you can have acceptance criteria over here. The system should allow quick search and retrieval of customer data. You can have multiple acceptance criteria. You can have, several different descriptions in here. What I tend to do is that from a project manager type perspective or a Scrum Master perspective, I like to, have our descriptions just as defined as much as I can, and any additional detail that will help the person that's going to be doing the configuration to have that description in there. So for, example, in this case, you may want to say, in the description where the customer data is located, if they need to know that, or any other bits and pieces of information that would definitely be helpful for anybody that's doing that configuration. Similar to how things work in the schedule, you have the ability to assign different resources. So you can assign resources at the story level. So in good agile practices, usually at the story level, that is where the product owner is going to be assigned because they technically own that story. And so you want to, be able to assign a product owner. I'm going to pick Deborah here. But you can also, with these tasks underneath there may be different individuals that will be working on these tasks. So I may say that, okay, Ben is going to be working on the extract the data. And then I may have somebody else that will clean and transform that data. That may be me. And so you can design these differently. So when I'm talking about product owner and them owning the story, they're going to be the go-to person, the person that is going to help whoever's doing the configuration make certain decisions, whether it's a question about the data, whether it's a question, do we need this piece of data as part of the cleanup? What do you want that search function to kind of look at? They're going to be the person that's going to answer all of those questions. They're going to be the ones that's going to give you the real-time feedback. So I always think it's important that either a product owner, and you may have more than one, be the onus on the story. They may not necessarily do any of the configuration work or any of the tasks associated to the story, but they own it, and they're the ones that's going to validate that it's been completed. You do have out of the box several different views with inside of the backlog as well. You have your backlog planning. You have your backlog cost, your backlog effort, your backlog planning, and your backlog tracking. In the backlog tracking, as you can see here, you have different information kind of formulated a little bit different, but you can go ahead and pick and choose what kind of columns you want to add in here. Maybe you want some additional data points. This one, for example, has health status. If you want to know the kind of health status of that task, if it's on track or maybe it is at risk or off track, you can definitely set up different views the way you want to. If you wanted to, for example, let me pop back here to backlog planning. If you wanted to, let's say, add the description field or the acceptance criteria into your view here on your planning, you can go ahead and you can kind of do that. I'm just going to go down and let's put it right after duration here. And so then you can see that on the fly. You will have to hover over it if you want to see all of the text associated with it. But this does give you kind of an overview of that as well. But you do also have access to that. So a lot of times the users will just come in that are doing the configuration. They would open up the quick edit. They would look at the various description, acceptance criteria, etc. To make sure that they know what they're supposed to be building it and how they're going to be building it. So they have that ability to kind of do that within inside there. Another thing that you can do within this, the backlog area, like I said, you want to do your stories, etc. You want to use good descriptions. You want to use great acceptance criteria, but you also can associate these to your schedule on the front. So if I go pop back out here to my schedule, and say I'm in sprint 1 and I want to add some items in here that are in the backlog, but I want them to show up in here because I kind of want to, from a project management perspective, keep eye on them, in here, have a good idea of what stories are going to be part of this sprint 1. And so you can do that pretty easy by just clicking the little blue circle with a plus sign and go to insert an item. We already know that pull customer data is part of sprint 1, so I can go ahead and click that, and I can select add to the schedule. It puts it down the end of my schedule here, but it does show up as a user story. So I know, okay, a part of my sprint 1, we need to complete this user story. And you can do that across all of your user stories that you have within your backlog. You can associate them to the appropriate sprints within there as well. Now that we are in here and we are talking about sprint 1, sprint 1 is really going to be your initial development and configuration. So this is where all of your user stories are going to come into play. You're going to have your build and configuration of the solution. You're going to conduct your testing. You're going to have various design and demo sessions, to kind of demo out what you've been working on so that you can get that ongoing feedback. And then you're also going to have stand-up meetings and sprint planning. And then you're going to have your sprint retrospective. Now, there isn't really a great way to do sprint retrospectives inside of OnePlan, but there's a ton of different tools out there that can assist you with sprint planning. So I highly recommend looking at the different tools and options that you have out there. There are a lot of free options that can definitely help you with sprint planning. And again, as you see here, I have pulled in that user story, and I know it's a user story because I see that by the item type here. I know when it is supposed to start, and I know that when it is due by, and so I can easily see that information in there as well. Another thing that's nice about it is that I do see who is assigned with to, so it does bring over that information as well. So I do have that. If at any point in time I wanted to kind of look at a different details and do some quick editing here, I see exactly the information that I would see if I went to the backlog, but I see it right here inside of my sprint plan that I have here. Very similar to our sprint 1, we have our sprint 2. Let's go ahead and kind of expand that out. We have build and configuration of a solution. So we do, again, here have another 80 hours allocated for our sprint 2. They pretty much follow the same cadence, build and configure, conduct testing, design and demo, stand-up meeting and sprint planning, and your retrospective. Retrospectives are always important because that helps you realign. If there's been any issues in the sprint before, you're correcting them. You're getting better as you go along. You may be improving on the information that you're collecting, and you have the ability to kind of take a holistic view at the sprint or at the end and just see where you can do ongoing improvement. Your stand-up meetings and your sprint planning, those are very important as well. This is where you want to periodically take the time and go back and look at your user stories. Are there any of them that you need to adjust based on the additional information that you received? Is there any changes that you need to be made? Or maybe a story is no longer relevant and it just needs to be removed from the system. You also want to do your stand-up meetings, which are usually about 15 minutes a day. And in those stand-up meetings, you want to make sure that you're talking about what you've done, what you got coming up. Are you having any blockers? Do you need any assistance or something like that? And these are just quick and easy updates that the whole team gives so that everybody knows where everybody's at, what they're doing, if they're having any blockers. And then the project manager can take care of those blockers if they are happening. So we talked about, our sprint planning, our initial development and configuration, our continued development and testing. And now we're going to be going into kind of sprint 3. Now you may have more sprints between your continued development and testing before you get to your final development and go live. But you'll see here, that's a little bit a different type of scenario that we're doing inside of this sprint. So we want to prepare for go live and post implementation support. We want to finalize the development of our CRM system. So what we're saying there is that we want to make sure that everything, usually that is a a pilot, a mini pilot that you would do, or UAT testing that you would perform to kind of do a quick walk through your system and make sure it is the way you want it to be. And then usually at that point in time, if that finalization is good and everything's go, you kind of do what's a code freeze. If it is not, then obviously you'll have a period of time to make those additional updates. Then we want to prepare for the go live and post implementation support. And again, even though this is more geared towards final development and go live preparation, we still want to do a retrospective because it's always important to have a retrospective no matter what the work is that is being done within that specific sprint. And then finally, we have a sprint for a go live and implementation support. So for that, you want to, ensure that there's a smooth transition to production, supporting your adoption and capturing insights for future enhancements. So you want to make sure that you're doing kind of all of that within your sprint 4. You have your go live with your CRM system. You want to monitor your system performance and address any issues as bugs. And then you want to do a final retrospective. And the final retrospective is going to be a little bit more in depth because now we're talking about everything in the project, everything that went great, everything that didn't go so great. What are our lessons learned from that? What are different things that we can take over to the next project? And so that we are more knowledgeable when we start on the next project by having the lessons learned from this project. And then you have your simple project closeout. This can depend on your requirements for project closeout. One of the things that's very important when you're doing project closeout is make sure that you released all your resources. So if you are using a resource plan inside of OnePlan, if you have any resources, for example, extended out past September the 30th here, you want to release them. In other words, remove them from the resource schedule, because if you don't, when the resource manager goes in, it's going to look like that individual has allocations to a project that may already be closed. You always want to make sure that you're cleaning up your resource plan at the end of your project so that it makes it easier for looking at user capabilities and availability within OnePlan. Always something to remember with inside of the schedule and the backlog is you have to save inside OnePlan. It's one of the areas that you do have to save. So it definitely is highly important that you continue to do that. All right, I think I have touched on anything. Anyone have any questions?
This is great. Yeah, how do you do the status reporting
Excuse
from
me?
here? Are you able to do status reporting from here then too? We don't have to go into it in detail, but do you find with this using OnePlan this way that there's other things that we can utilize and leverage that we can cover in different sessions?
Yeah, there's one thing I did not talk about is that we do have the activities area with each one of these sprints. So if you're clicking on the activities, if a lot of times you may say, you have your stand-up meetings there, but you might want to put down here a specific date. So you may have stand-up meeting, let's just say August the 2nd, and you may have that, and you might want to assign that to everybody just so that they're aware of this activity. And then when it happens, you can just progress it through. You may have other different activities that you want to kind of associate to your different sprints. You can definitely do that as well. So I like the activity area here as well, just to, as a reminder, as I'm in here in OnePlan, when is our next stand-up meeting? Instead of having to pop out to my Outlook calendar, I can kind of put that information in my activity area as well. And you may have some activities that are not really associated to your schedule or your backlog, but you just may want to keep that just as a reference. Like maybe you have to talk to a vendor about a certain piece of equipment and when it's going to be delivered. So it's kind of nice to have those right within inside of your schedule inside here of OnePlan.
That's a great tip. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome. All right, Deborah, I guess I will hand it back to you.
Yes, and I think we're going to go ahead and hand it over to Tina. That was great. Thank you.
You got it. Alrighty. So thank you again, Melody, for that awesome demonstration of walking through different ways that you can manage agile work within OnePlan natively, not with that, regardless of the external tools that you might be using if you need to use OnePlan natively. So I just want to quickly cover and summarize what we covered, or Melody covered today. We started by getting a solid grasp of Agile principles and explored OnePlan and how it can support your Agile project management needs. And throughout the session, Melody shared valuable tips and tricks, including how to set up an Agile work plan, walking you through setting up a new Agile work plan within OnePlan. Melody showed you how to choose the right Agile template and configure important settings like iterations or sprints, selecting team members, and estimating units like story points or hours. Then she dove into creating and managing a backlog, so demonstrating how to fill your backlog with user stories and then break them down into manageable tasks, assign them, and then estimate the required effort, and then adjusting backlog priorities as needed. She also talked about sprint planning and execution and discussed how to efficiently transition items from the backlog into a sprint, assigning work, setting sprint goals, and tracking progress using OnePlan. And finally, Melody discussed enhancing sprint cadences with notes and activities. So she explored how to use notes to capture sprint objectives and activities, as well as how to tag team members or link work items. So finally, we also covered how to log meetings and discussions and keep a comprehensive timeline of sprint activities, all within OnePlan. So as you start using OnePlan, you be sure to leverage our plethora of resources available to you to optimize project management and boost results for your organization. So we have OnePlan Academy, which has your self-paced, video-based learning. You'll find that at oneplanacademy.com. Then we also have our knowledge base at support.oneplan.ai, where you can find how-to articles for pretty much any piece of OnePlan that you might be using. And then finally, our upcoming Tech Tuesday is scheduled for August 12th. The topic is to be announced, but we will get that information out to you as soon as we can. So keep an eye out for that. Finally, we have our monthly virtual office hours. And Stephanie, if you have anything you want to add, definitely hop in. But we have one coming up tomorrow, which we will be talking about Agile plan management as well as reporting. And Stephanie, is there anything else you want to add for virtual office hours?
Nothing more to add except that this is live in the community. If you would like to register, please go ahead and head over there.
Beautiful. Thank you very much. So keep an eye out for that. And if you're available, please join us to get kind of that more intimate one-on-one Q&A experience. And again, I want to thank you all for your time and your attention today. And Melody, thank you for walking us through that demonstration of Agile Work Management in OnePlan.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.